Formula One's newest team is lacking tremendously in its debut season, but not in the area you might think. Cadillac is up against much more experienced and successful teams in F1 and unsurprisingly has failed to score a point so far or even get a car out of the first part of qualifying for either a sprint or main Grand Prix. This start is no great surprise given everyone, including the team, thought Cadillac would be last this season and maybe last by some margin. So being well behind rivals was to be expected. But actually the pace is pretty respectable. Cadillac's vying with big spending, underachieving works team Aston Martin every weekend to avoid being last, and even starting to annoy some established midfielders. Where its driver Sergio Perez has already grown impatient though is somewhere else. The ex-Red Bull driver has started to establish himself as the lead over Valtteri Bottas, but dropped out of easily Cadillac's most competitive race so far in Canada with a freak suspension failure. And Perez says the operational side of the team is lacking tremendously and needs to rapidly improve. He says Cadillac is in a massive hurry because we are not maximising the results. Now, Cadillac hasn't thrown away a first F1 points finish or anything like that, but it needs to prove that it can piece together things more convincingly. Perez's DNF in Canada with a failure that didn't appear to be the result of any contact or misadventure is proof that this team is still learning and working out what its car can and cannot do. And there have been myriad problems less dramatic than that the team has had to work through already. There are systems to troubleshoot, processes to improve, technical issues to overcome. For example, Cadillac's had problems with the low pressure fuel system that's made collecting and pumping fuel difficult, which have now been fixed. Aspects other teams take for granted, such as ensuring the perfect finish and fitting of aerodynamic parts to minimise performance loss, or making rapid changes in the garage between runs in qualifying, have also had to be worked through. Then there's the problem of making the most of the car setup-wise over a weekend. Not only is Cadillac light of historic data, but it's inevitably playing catch-up in processing the vast amounts of live data gathered during an event that must be interrogated to understand how to improve performance. It's inevitable that there have been operational problems for Cadillac given it's still early days. As team boss Graham Loudon likes to point out, the next newest team on the grid, Haas, has started 219 Grand Prix since joining the grid in 2016, and Cadillac so far has notched up just 5. But this is all rapidly improving, and it's also to Cadillac's immense credit that it was able to introduce a major aerodynamic upgrade package for the 4th round of the season in Miami that worked well. This tested its new systems and processes and proved successful. Cadillac is still on a steep learning curve, but it's only going to get stronger as the season progresses and has a genuinely encouraging early performance trajectory to build on. The first target for Cadillac in 2026 was simply to be fast enough to qualify. While the team never said this publicly, the regulation requiring a car to lap within 107% of the fastest lap in order to qualify was a legitimate concern. But Cadillac has achieved this target emphatically. It's never even come close to flirting with failing to qualify on pace. The 107% measurement is based on the fastest time in Q1, but on average the faster Cadillac has only been 3.176% down across these qualifying sessions, and its weakest, where Bottas was 4.67% adrift in China sprint qualifying, was down to power deployment problems and the absence of teammate Perez. It's the slowest team, sure, and a couple of times has been a big chunk off the real midfield group, even when it's compared well against the Aston Martin Honda disaster. But the trend since the Miami upgrade has been encouraging, as close as 0.2 adrift of the tail of the midfield in qualifying, then racing some of those cars and even beating some on merit for the first time in Canada. This is no mean feat. While there are certain factors in favour of a new team compared to in the past, for example the regulation demanding that customer teams have both the same engine spec and the same available settings as the works team, and the cost cap, it's still remarkable for a new team to operate at this level. It's worth pointing out that in Q1 we don't always see the best of the absolute fastest teams, whereas Cadillac is operating closer to the peak of its potential at this stage of qualifying. And it does fall further adrift when we apply the super time metric, which takes each car's single fastest lap of the weekend, expresses it as a percentage of the outright quickest, then averages it out. In that comparison, Cadillac is 4.335% off the ultimate pace, but not far behind Aston Martin. And lest we forget, Cadillac has outqualified Aston Martin twice in 8 Q1 sessions and could have done so more often with tidier jobs in China, Miami and Canada. This perfectly credible performance level defies all realistic expectations for a team that hasn't even finished building its facilities and is still recruiting personnel. The next objective beyond simply qualifying was reliability, and while this has been more of a challenge, Cadillac's arguably still doing better than expected. It got Perez's car to the finish on debut in Australia, has notched up 3 two-car finishes, and achieved an 80% finishing rate across the 5 Grand Prix to date. In doing so, Cadillac has completed more racing laps in Grand Prix this season than Red Bull, Williams, Racing Bulls, Audi, Aston Martin and reigning world champion McLaren. Loudon set 2 targets for the team in 2026, gain the respect of its competitors and measure its own ability to execute. The former has been easily achieved, but the ability to execute is the one where there's the biggest room for improvement.
We'll get back to that in just a moment, but first, a word from today's sponsor, Sentry. Sentry helps you find, fix and ship. Faster than you can say, looks good to me. Monitor any application to surface crashes and slowdowns with tools like distributed tracing, logs and session replay. Plus with SIA, Sentry's AI debugging agent, you can find the root cause faster, using real production context, and even predict what might break next. Catch problems before your users do. Quit bugging. Go to sentry.io and try it free.
Given there could easily be a careful honeymoon period to manage for a new team and its driver, Perez has been surprisingly outspoken about where he feels Cadillac is missing compared to its opposition, but who can blame him? Both he and Bottas came to Cadillac in similar positions, very experienced drivers who'd spent 2025 on the sidelines but didn't feel like they were done with F1 and wanted to get back on the grid. Each clearly had something to offer in terms of their experience of title-winning teams. The question mark was what level of on-track ability would they then bring? And of the two, the move so far is definitely working out much better for Perez. It's been tricky to judge them at the start of the season because of the operational problems, some performance inconsistencies within the upgrades, and reliability issues that have made clean weekends difficult. Bottas had a new chassis in Canada, for example. But Perez is building some momentum after the team's messier start to the year, and when it all comes together, he's the one who's grabbed the higher peaks. He's also come to this project extremely hungry. Perez told us recently that he had doubts about his comeback but now feels he's proving himself to be one of the best drivers on the grid. That might be a stretch, but we're definitely seeing Perez back to his best, and he wants to achieve something meaningful with Cadillac, not just set it up for future success, but be part of some of that success himself. You've seen and heard that from him from the very first race weekend. The novelty of Cadillac simply making it to the finish in its first Grand Prix wore off within seconds of the checkered flag when Perez was demanding an improvement over the radio. He's been lighting a fire under the team, pushing hard in meetings, suggesting people they should go after, and highlighting areas he feels need urgent improvement. Bottas is a naturally quieter character, so his contribution in this area is probably more understated, but his on-track performance right now also doesn't lend itself to the same kind of authority that Perez is speaking with. What Cadillac might need to be wary of is that if it doesn't show the kind of progress in all areas to build on its early potential, it may run the risk of losing the better of its two drivers. We understand Perez is already on the radar of other midfield teams who might need to consider alternatives for next year or beyond. For now, he is committed to Cadillac. Perez has always been a loyal driver, is keen to be part of Cadillac's rise up the grid, and is playing his part in that on track and off it. This team's early performance promise gives it a better foundation than it and Perez expected, but that doesn't give Cadillac a free pass or an easier ride for the rest of the season. Now it gets even harder as it must work out how to make the progress that Perez demands.